Good evening. This is Gloria Taylor Brown. This is the 31st Gathering of Priestesses. Tonight we have with us Maria and Lynda Yraceburu. And I'm hoping I'm saying that right because it's one of those words. They've got three different accents on that word, and I think are umlauts. I didn't know the Apaches had umlauts. So both of them are medicine women of different traditions, but have come together and are now doing their work together. And of course, we have my co-host, Catherine Ravenwood, who is gracing us with her presence. We're delighted to have her here. She's always a delight. We do have a chat section, and if you put your questions into the chat, I'll try to make sure that we get them answered. We are filling up here. I'm watching the attendees roll in, and I want to thank you and appreciate you all showing up. Patricia, Seisha, I see you're here, and Virginia, and Jaime, and Renee, and Carla, and Aviana, and Amy. And so we have about 35 people registered for tonight. I don't know how many will show up. We did have 35 on our last show. So welcome, and let's get started. And of course, you do know that anything you miss, you can watch on YouTube later. So we're delighted. And so let me get rid of this banner. I don't like it after I get started here. And all right, so Maria, let's start with you. Since, actually, yeah, I have to say that, you know, Maria was the first one who was invited, and then I realized that Lynda is kind of an equal medicine woman, and I was being kind of rude and not inviting her. So at the last minute, I said, Lynda, you want to be on? And maybe Maria will be okay with that. Great, and you know, after all, they got to live together, so they figure it out. So Maria, what I'd like you to tell us is what set you on the path of a priestess?
Oh, you know, up until about 20 years ago, I'd have probably fought you on that one. I thought I was just a little Native American girl following the way of Earth like my grandpa taught me. I didn't grow up with a lot of women, but when I met Lynda and we ended up together, next thing I knew I had all kinds of daughters and aunties, and the second half of my life became all about the women. So I guess about the time I turned 40, because they were all into the goddess stuff. And so we started looking at how our paths and our philosophies crossed, and we've been about the women ever since. So I guess secretly, or not secretly, unconsciously, probably back in college was when I first started leaning that way, because I got involved with a women's support group. It was one of the first ones that came out in 1972 to help incest victims. And my counselor at the time was a psychologist, and we started talking, and I made some suggestions about some little rites of passage that she could include with what she was doing with her group to help move them through some of their post-traumatic stress. And we've been doing it ever since, just building on it and running Women's Circle. And I started my first Moon Lodge back in 1980, I think. And it's just grown. We have little circles all over the world now that have blossomed off of those teachings and moving out. So part of what we're doing here, we have 76 acres in Las Vegas, Nevada. Las Vegas, Nevada. I do not live there. I live in Las Vegas, New Mexico. That's a dyslexic moment. Anyway, what we're doing up here is building a retreat facility so we can still have some place to do the old earth ways and guarantee that to the women that want to do things. You know, so much they try to step on that way of life, and we've been really lucky through our lifetime. We've gotten to meet people like Nikki Scully and Brooke Medicine Eagle and you guys and Max Dashu and, you know, Louisa Tesh, and they're all part of our family, partly because I'm too stupid not to go ask if I should know them, you know. I'm just like, hey, you want to be friends? And they're like, sure. And so we do it, and we get really close, and And we know that when we come together as women, anytime, whether we're playing or whether we're in council or doing ritual for the earth, our lives are never going to be the same again. So we trigger each other to grow more every time we sit down together. And I want to thank you for having us on. And of course, it's okay that Lynda's here, because without her, I'm incomplete. It takes two of us to make one woman.
I understand that. So, Lynda, let's hear what started you on the path of the priestess.
Well, I was a late bloomer in life, and my role of who I am today. I really didn't grow up understanding anything about priestess, anything about any other sect than a Catholic religion. So I was a good little Catholic girl, and I became a dedicated healthcare professional, and I was a cardiovascular X-ray technologist doing closed heart surgery when it first came out. And what we did a lot was work with radiation. And in all of the work that I did, I got radiation poisoning because we did it a lot, all the time. And the way it affected my body was that I ended up with many different things, as far as kidney failure, Epstein-Barr, which is grandmother mononucleosis, bulging discs and tears and herniations, and endometriosis, which is a big-time feminine disease that is happening in our times today. And that's when the cells within our uterus, it comes out of our uterus and it starts to do what it does best, and that is the cells go and they separate and divide and make new cells, just as our uterus is supposed to, and it forms flaps of skin. And it can form flaps throughout the body. So as you're having your moon time, your cycle, those cramps can go anywhere in the body, those flaps. Quite painful. And to make a very long story short, all of my systems in my body were shutting down. And I really could not lift my head up off of the pillow. The Western medicine ended up failing me and not supporting of who I was as a dedicated healthcare professional. And I ended up being so sick and almost ready to check out that the only thing I could do left for me was to call on Creator. And Creator was not strong in my life at that point. I knew nothing what else to do, and my ancestors started coming in, and they started showing me things on how to take care of my body and how to listen to the signs that my body was telling me so that I could heal my own body and listen to the innate healing words that my body has to show me. So I started doing that and holding little different pressure points in my hand, or doing different things with my hands, of rubbing them together that would energize my whole body. And one step, I was able to come back fairly strong. However, my physical body was coming back, but my emotional, my mental, and my spiritual still were pretty lost. And that's about the time that I met Maria. And Maria has such a beautiful way with her teaching and incorporating ritual and ceremony into one's life, that she believes that we go back to the original source to heal that source of dis-ease that is been, whether it's latent in our bodies or just been, waiting for the proper time for that dis-ease to come out. She goes right to the source, so that there's no Band-Aid put on there. And while she did that, it also helped me go back to my own ancestry, which is the Magyar Romani, and that is the Hungarian Gypsy. And through that, I was able to connect with my ancestors, and they reminded me of their most beautiful medicine that they have. And I'm honored today to share that medicine of Vashpesh, hand walking, with anybody and everybody that will listen. I've been amazed with the healing modality, this amazingly simple healing modality, that we can create change within the body very quickly, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, by stimulating certain lines and mounts in the hand. And we can do that by believing that all of the systems are located in the hand. The respiratory, the digestion, the reproductive, the nervous, all those systems are in the hand. And by stimulating them, we can make that message go directly to the brain fairly quickly, whereas in the body, if, for example, we have a stomach ache, a lot of times, if you're familiar with the phone tree little game where you whisper a little something to your neighbor, and then by the time it gets all the way around the circle, that is not the message that was originally passed. And so that basically is what happens within the body, where the body in the stomach is going to try and get to the brain, say, I have a stomach ache, I need to create change here. By the time it gets through all that gobbledygook and all that blocked off information, the message a lot of times says, oh, my big toe is hurting me. So the brain then sends out different, or it tries to relate to that message, but it can't do it. So it's not able to change the body's energy in a quick way.
Yeah. So Maria and Lynda, both of you have strong traditions, to put it mildly. The Apache tradition, which is, you know, in a way, it's interesting. I was raised Cherokee. My grandfather's Cherokee, and the Cherokee tradition and the Apache tradition, in many ways, are as far apart as the Magyar and the Apache.
Yeah.
It is, you know, I mean, you guys are hard knots. So, have you found with and the Gypsy tradition is not that forgiving either, and so I'm wondering, have you found places where you've had to work the edges off of your traditions and your belief system so that you could work together?
Actually, you know, what we found was that once we could find a common ground of understanding for what we were talking about, we actually had a lot in common. A lot in common. Many of the healing ways and the ways that the Gypsies look at the land is very much like, you know, Native America. I've even heard them referred to as the Native Americans of Europe. So, what we have and what we teach and what we do here is a compilation of what we have found to be common ground. I don't know about you guys, you ladies, but, you know, growing up, I was one of those, of course, you know, the black sheep of the family, you got to look for your own path kind of thing. It's kind of interesting how the sacred parents set us up that way, so we'd go out there and look at other things, isn't it? I find that's a common story. You know, I was happy with my tradition, but I grew up being raised by men and didn't really have much of a feminine perspective. Although my grandfather, he was pretty good. He was, I would have to say, old-style traditional. A lot of the new style traditional in the last 100 years, you can tell how much Christianity has invaded stuff.
Right.
So it's not really the pure stuff. Now, that's not saying what I do is pure. What I do is through that perspective foundation that my grandfather gave me, and then going to all these places and learning about these other things. So when I present something that, like I got from my Hawaiian aunt, well, I share what I learned from her because it worked for me, you know? But I tell people, look, this is Hawaiian, but I'm giving it to you Apache style because that's who I am and I don't know who else to be. So what we discovered when we got together, we've only had what I would call 3 major fights in our 20-year relationship that we've been together. And that was all within the first 3 months we were together. And we figured out, we were so busy trying to convince the other one that our perspective was the right one, that we missed the fact that we were arguing the same side of the argument.
Ah, that's what I wondered, because
yeah,
you're both very powerful women, and you come at things from a very powerful viewpoint.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm Irish Gypsy on one side, Cajun on the other side, and Cherokee. So plus a family gathering at our house was, you know, like the United Nations. So we had all colors. But it's interesting that as you've come together and as you've realized this, because I see this as a synthesis that is hope for other people out there who are, you know, maybe living in a house with somebody else who doesn't believe the same way they do. Thinks they're totally crazy because all of a sudden they're out, you know, chasing this goddess creature, or down the road of becoming a Buddhist, or whatever it is. And so that's why I'm really interested in this and how you've managed to meld this relationship into something that allows you to work together and to bring both of your individual thoughts, processes, traditions without stepping on the other one's toes. So what would you say about that, Lynda?
Well, we do different things, and each one of our own individual things helps accent what the other person is doing for our client. And you know, we're masters and specialties in what we do individually, and then we bring it together, and so we're not stepping on each other's toes, and we take what is in that moment, and you know, as being Rom or Gypsy, wherever you go, you're picking up part of your practice, your daily life. Mm-hmm. And so we work together so well, and we do so many different things that we're not stepping on each other's toes. And that's not really what it's about, you know. We are here to share what we have individually with our client or the person that's staying with us, and it's not about competition, it's not about anything other than sharing our love and sharing our experiences as they came about. For me, when we first got together, I was still really sick, I was still pretty exhausted, my brain was still pretty fuzzy. And so, as Maria said, we did have 3 what we would consider major arguments or disagreements, and we were really speaking different languages for the same thing. Mm-hmm. And once we got our rest and we were able to see that we were just speaking the different language for the same thing, then we were able to communicate and really work a beautiful relationship together. And that's what we are really all about, is just helping others get to a point in their life where they can have love, unconditional love, have Creator in their life, in our Mother, and, you know, understand what their purpose and goal is, so that they can just, you know, one step, and live in joy and peace and bliss in this time.
Lovely. Well, you know, the other thing I'd like to talk with you all about, which we've sort of talked about a little bit offline, and as you know, Raven and I have been looking at the idea of creating the Goddess Ranch, which is basically, as we say, a retirement home for those of us who do not fit into the Baptist and Methodist retirement home. They would burn me at the stake. Raven might be able to qualify for the Mormon one, but you know, I'm not so sure about that. I think they excommunicate.
Oh, I'd have to make some major concessions.
So, but I know that in a way you are, that's what your goal is as well, as maybe not so much for a retirement community, but you were talking about the 76 acres. So tell us a little bit about your process of even finding this land, and what made you make these choices to go to Las Vegas, and what do you see coming out of this?
Well, when it originally started, it was actually kind of a vision that my grandfather had, and it came out of a prophecy that was handed down in his family from the Apache dreamer Naakai, who was his great uncle. And the dreamer was around, you know, mid-1800s when the Apaches and the United States government and the Mexican government were all going at it pretty good. Mm-hmm. My family, my great-grandmother's side of the family is from the Oak Creek area in Arizona, and my great-grandfather's family is from down by Truth or Consequences. When he was born, it was called Hot Springs. Anyway, in the stories that I was told, part of our family's job, because we had chosen to be here during the changing time paradigms, the world, was that we would help create a community that ran under traditional earth values. And yet, not in the style of going back like we're going to live in teepees and we're going to, you know, that kind of style, but how those values could be updated for contemporary life. And so I pretty much have been teaching that my whole life, just kind of going with the flow, trying to figure out, you know, what the next step is and listening to the sacred parents and what they send us. And back when I got together with Lynda, I believe it was like in 2002 or something, people started coming to us and asking us a lot more questions about it. And it was something that was supposed to be community done. And so we had several pieces of property we looked at in Arizona. Well, that all happened synchronistically with, you know, the bottom dropping out of the real estate market. Then they went to all these little 40-acre gated ranches over there, you know. And it's like, you know what? Wilderness, we don't want HOAs telling us what we can and can't do, okay? We're going to go with whatever mom tells us to do, and that's the whole point of the exercise. So in 2008, we found some property north of town that we thought we were going to be able to pull together, and things just kept, you know, from the owner's perspective, he kept changing his mind about what he wanted out of the deal. And then finally it was like I was ready to just say, you know what, we're done. That's all the time I'm putting into this one. And 12 of our friends stepped up to the plate, and one of them found this place that we now live on, and they said, here, we're going to put the money in and we're buying the place. And so they bought it, and we moved on as caretakers in 2012. Hello, okay, now you want to talk synchronistic. There's one for you. And so we spent 2 years traveling around and stuff because I had contracts for workshops and conferences and circles and different things. And this last year we took the year off and stayed home so I could finish my new book, Ah-kine Re-membrance, which is all about us remembering that star part of us and now incorporating that. That's a big part of what the fifth world's about, is learning that side of our lineage now. And so Lynda's showing off.
Bring it closer to the screen.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, up a little bit. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, cut off. You can't see the whole book no matter what you do.
Okay. Panning down.
Okay. So anyway, so that was partly why we came, because all these things were starting to fall into place, and so here we are, and now the people that bought the land, they've told us, okay, we're gonna give you 2 years to raise the money to buy us out now, so our nonprofit will now own it outright when we get done, and we can pretty much set about doing what we came here to do.
Mm-hmm.
One of our initial things was that we wanted to create a type of mystery school, earth teachings and such, that when all of us were in retirement age, we'd have the biggest, bestest faculty ever. And people would know they could come here and they could stay and they could teach and they could live in town, or, you know, if things worked out, they could live on the land, or however that would form up. But that's directed also by Mom and what she chooses to have here. So that's what we got going, and we know it always starts with the women, no matter where we go and live. You know, it's a matter of putting together the women's circle, and then you build with the families on top of that, and you see where it's going to take you. It's been a little different here in New Mexico. You know, I'm originally from Arizona, and it was slow there. And then we spent most of our life together in San Diego, and we thought we were really slow there, okay? And then we moved to New Mexico. Now, I had to drop my energy levels about 50%, and I'm still going too fast for here. So we're learning a new way, a slower way, a more comprehensive way to be, and not forcing things. And one of the teachings that we share when we do our women's circles, and even when we're out with the guys doing fire ceremonies and stuff, is that whether you're a man or you're a woman, we are now in the feminine earth.
Yes.
In the feminine earth, it's about allowing things to happen, not trying to go out and force them to happen.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. That's what we have in the spiritual world. You had to go out and you had to make things happen. No, now it's about allowing it to come to you and then taking action.
What I'm finding is if the more you force, the less likely it is to happen.
Yes.
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 Yes. It sounds like when we were teenagers, huh? The more they tried to get us to do something, the more we were going to run the other way.
Yeah, well, we won't go there. I still have scars. But, you know, Raven said to me, you know, I've said some things about helping her build her business, and she said to me, you know, that won't work in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
That just won't work in Albuquerque. You can't do that in Albuquerque.
That's a true story. She's telling a very true story.
Oh, I surrendered
Albuquerque
to
is
that.
not San Diego.
No,
It's not.
Neither is Las
Las
Vegas.
Vegas is not Albuquerque.
Oh.
I have a question for you two.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is, and I'm sure other people would like to hear this besides me, how did you learn to slow down? How did you learn to open yourself to that place of allowing rather than, you know, push, push, push? How did you shift that kind of awareness into an allowance way of life? Because that is a whole different way of living.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a necessity for us.
Yeah. I have hyperadrenaline syndrome. I was hit by lightning, and so it's not an easy thing for me. I don't require the same amount of sleep that most people do. I do a lot of channeling, if you will, and creative stuff between the written works and the teaching. I'm always charting ceremony. So I am always busy, but I think what really helped was the background I got from my grandfather about working with the cycles of time. And by charting time throughout the year with the lunar cycles, I've become aware in my 60 years of what type of energy each cycle brings. So when we entered this fifth world, it was easier to fall into sync by knowing that. And the shift in those cycles that came about when we made that transition from the fourth world of soul sickness into the fifth world of coming together, basically, knocked me on my ass. Okay? And like I said, I thought I was going slow. And it did. It put me down, and I had to get over the judgment that I needed to take that time to myself. And every time I'd start to try to go out and make things happen, it would not work, and I'd end up down again. And so it became really obvious, especially over this last year, because, you know, Gloria and I were talking earlier, and we've been talking to friends over the last month. This last year's been really extremely hard on people emotionally. Physically too, but the emotional upheavals that are going on in the fact that because the planet's changing, we have to kind of redefine who we are too. We have to deal with erratic weather patterns that we have not experienced in this lifetime, and things of that nature. And so it became obvious, because we are traditions of observation, that the only way to actually move forward quickly was to slow down and really, really super focus our intent within the energy cycles that would allow us to do so. So like now, we know we're going into the dream time, and most Earth traditions carry that the winter's the time to go into dreaming. I grew up going to gatherings every winter solstice where elders would get together, and they'd sit there and they'd just do spontaneous channels and bring forth these elaborate visions that would actually occur in the upcoming year. And they called that dreaming reality into being.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a clue as to what's going on. And I like to teach my students about prophecy, because, you know, prophecy is a story that's been handed down generation to generation. And what's contained in it is the road signs we're supposed to watch for. It's like a map. And so when we have prophecies that come to us, what we do is we look for the outcome to be a positive factor, and that's where we focus all our energy. We focus all of that there, because the more of us that focus that energy towards the positive aspect of what a prophecy can be when it plays out, the more possibility there is that that's what we're going to get. And that's why this dreaming of reality, we are reality's co-creators, each and every one of us. And fear gives us that polarity that we're all suffering from. You know, I don't know how much you guys know about the Earth traditions, you know, but it's like there was no mental health problem, okay? I mean, if you heard voices, if you saw things when you were a kid, they made you a frickin' priest, okay? They started teaching you what you needed to know. They didn't try to lock you in a box and say, that's not a reality. So that's the foundation I grew up with. And so sometimes I have to tell people when I talk to them, I'm sorry, I really can't understand your perspective. And it's not that I'm not trying, it's because I haven't been there when there was none of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then we try to find that common ground where I can explain to them how they can do some of the things that I know or that she knows.
So, Lynda, coming from your medical background, how does this work with, you know, I mean, you've got the scientific background, but you've now sort of moved over to the softer, well, I don't know if it's softer. We are talking Apache.
It's a little softer.
But we are talking, you know, you've come over to this, the other traditions here. And for you, you know, how has this melded for you as you're moving forward?
Well, Maria has talked about the cycles, and that was big for me because I was a pretty linear person being in the medical profession. That was who I was and what I was about, and it was, you know, black and white. I didn't really know a lot of curves and a lot of circles. I didn't think in a circular kind of way. And so it's helped me first to understand the cycles, and that to understand that a cycle is about 2 weeks. So as far as if I'm going to make commitments, I'm going to try and stay within that cycle of commitment. I'm going to say, okay, I I can do this project for you and I can have it done within that cycle. That helps me to slow down and not overcommit myself. When I'm overcommitting myself, then the world is going way faster than I am, and I can't keep up. So I need to really consciously stay present in the moment. I need to focus on my breathing. And for my clients, I'm always about one step, and working the KISS method. For me, that means keep it simple, sweetie. Many people know that KISS method as keep it simple, stupid. That is not a simple thing. Once I start making things harder as being stupid as opposed to being simple, then my life is going too fast for me and I can't keep up. So if I just remember, if my life is getting too chaotic, and I say out loud, remember one step. If I try to go 6 steps, 2 steps, or skipping around, I'm going to trip because I'm not in a way that I'm grounded and that, you know, life, again, is passing me by and I can't keep up for nothing. So if I can remember, and this year has been a big year for conscious breathing. And I talk to my clients about that. When you're so upset, when there's so much chaos in your life, where is your breath? Are you taking in a breath? Are you taking in just a little bit of a breath? Are you taking in a breath and holding your breath? Because all of that is going to help us or not to slow down. And that's what in this time, our physical body, it's so heavy and it's got so much stuff going on. Then we have our mental body and our emotional body and our spiritual body, which is a lighter body. Even if we have our burdens or we have our sorrows, or, you know, it's a lighter body than our physical body. So there's no way that our physical body can keep up with those mental body, with those air type of bodies, right? So for me, I'm all about making it easy for the body, and helping the body keep up with everybody else. So for me, it's really important to stay as present as possible. When I feel myself floating away, I go right to my breath, because when I consciously breathe, then I'm in the moment. As long as I can stay in the moment, I'm doing good. Time is working with me instead of against me. It's helping me one step, and just slow my way down. So knowing the cycles and knowing not to overcommit in those cycles and knowing how important it is to stay present helps me to slow down, and just one step my way instead of being stressed out and full of chaos. I'm at peace. One step. Yeah,
I understand, and you know, it's interesting that you know, we have the ability to go for weeks without food. We have the ability to go for days without water, but we only have the ability to go for a few moments without air.
Right.
And if you are starving your body and starving your brain, you know, a lot of people are experiencing sleep apnea these days.
Yes.
And they think, oh, well, it just means, you know, that I, you know, wake up a lot during the night, or I don't breathe so well. Well, the truth is you're killing your brain.
Exactly.
And I've seen the results of that where, you know, seemingly healthy people have become like Alzheimer's victims because of sleep apnea. And it's purely, I mean, nothing else wrong with them except not breathing.
Right.
And one of the things that it's so important that in remembering to breathe, remembering to draw that air down deep into your lungs, because one of the things we do is we breathe on the tops of our lungs these days. We don't breathe down into our lungs. We rarely empty our lungs. And what we get is kind of a noxious gas that hangs out in the bottom of our lungs, as I understand it. I'm learning all of this through the gift of having pneumonia. So
wow.
Not the way I chose to learn it.
So few things come the way we would like to learn them.
Yes, well, you know,
you got it down, so now you know, and it's a good thing.
Hey, you know, this year we did take on a new mantra in 2014, and we had to say it a lot, and that was, it is what it is, and we just had to allow it to be.
Yeah, well, I had a teacher a number of years ago that Richard Sutphin, you may have remembered him. He wrote a book about past lives, future lives, and he put in there, he said, he had a little saying which was, what is. It is the railing against what is that causes us pain.
Yes.
And I know that many of us spend a great deal of time trying to figure out how to get out of whatever it is we're in at the moment in time. Instead of being there and being present and figuring out, okay, what's the gift? What is it that this is giving to me? And what is it, the opportunity I have in this? And so, you know, I know that that's true. And I know that as we move forward, all of us have to support one another in realizing that things aren't working the way they used to work.
No.
Don't.
Whole new day. Whole new day.
Whole new day. And you know, part of the thing with the body, too, is we have to understand that there's a certain amount of mutation that's going on right now. With the reversal of the magnetic poles, the thinning ozone, and all of the things that are happening, it does affect us. And, you know, we see it in the kids that are being born now, the kids that have been being born for the last 30, 40 years. And, you know, they come in here and they've got more heightened sensuality than we do. And the prophecies say that, you know, fifth world, one of the things we're supposed to learn is telepathic sensuality. That it's not just going to be the mind vision that we're going to be sending to one another. It's going to be the whole sensation about whatever we're trying to communicate. And so, you know, our bodies are going to have to change in some ways for that to be able to occur. It's not just about exercising our psychic abilities. Our frequencies have to be upgraded. And we all talk about it, but, you know, when it hits us, we kind of like to look to, I am broken, I am sick, something's going on.
Yeah, I understand that. So, Raven, you look like you have a question. I don't know why, but you do.
No, except that I really do appreciate hearing all this, and I think it's very true. And I think that, well, maybe I do have a question. So, a lot of us work for a living, meaning we're not doing our work, we're going to somebody else's place, we have a job, and we're having to commit X number of hours a week, and when we get home we're tired, especially if you're not 20 anymore. Right. And it's harder to find the balance of earning a living and being in balance with the possibly the real world, if you want to call it, you know, that driving into town to work and doing your job and being with the computer all day and the phones all day and whoever walks in the door all day, whatever it is you do, it's very draining. And it's hard to stop and say, oh, I'm going to breathe and I'm going to go outside and go for a walk now and calm down, because maybe you can't leave where you can't leave your job and go for a walk someplace. So I think that it's just that being present and being with your breath is probably very helpful for the working class, you know, who's not living on 70 acres. And not that y'all aren't working, you're working your butts off, I know. You know what I mean, though? What I'm saying, you're putting in that time for somebody else to earn the paycheck. Right. And it gets to be such a cycle that is so hard to get out of.
Yeah. Yeah, back when I used to work in the printing industry for a while, and it was real important, and I did learn one thing that we can do, and that's like, excuse yourself, go to the restroom for 5 minutes, and that bathroom becomes a haven.
Yeah.
You know, and I used to carry smudge around with me, and I'd smudge in the bathroom, or I'd go to my car and I'd smudge. And then I would try to, like on my way home, stop like at a little park or something, maybe just for 5-10 minutes to do breathing to clear the day before I would take it home to my family. And I found those invaluable. And I know it's not easy, but those are two things that I don't know if I'd have made it out here on the other end to actually finding the opportunity to do my spiritual work 100% of the time if I hadn't set a discipline about those other things. That, and every morning I was taught every morning to get up and thank the sacred parents for another good day in my life, you know, and then that would set the tone. That would give me a sense that I could do anything and go about the day. And they weren't always easy, because in the printing industry they could be 16-hour days, and with 2 little kids, you know, and it was like, wow. But I made it through, and there were days where I thought I'd lost my connection, but now looking back, I know that's all that probably got me through some of it and got me here. So however simple, however folks can do it, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, make sure you're at least making the connection and you feel it in your heart once a day.
All right.
However long it is.
Well said. Thank you.
Yeah.
And another thing that you can do that's so easy, part of my KISS method, is, you know, it is a busy, fast-paced day out there. And, you know, they're 48-hour days now. They're no longer 24-hour days, you know. We're jamming so much in there. And so we physically feel our body getting tired and run down. So what we can do throughout the day, rubbing our hands together vigorously, fronts, back, sides. What that's doing is it's regenerating and rejuvenating our whole body. The fronts of our hands represents the fronts of our body. The backs of our hands represents the backs of our body. So if we took 30 seconds a couple times a day when we feel like our wind is not what it once was, it will give us a second, third, fourth wind. I've had 23 wins in one day, if that's what I needed, you know, without but that was just in that first hour. Yeah. That's what I got to do to just one step my way along. I don't got the end. Right.
Yeah.
I got all this stuff, but I need to have some clarity. Yes, you got it, even just like that.
I noticed that this is what I do during the day. I find myself doing this.
Yes, and so now by rubbing your hands and by getting that movement, fluidity to yourself, and you're giving yourself a few moments for you.
Yeah.
She likes to tell people you can do it anytime, anywhere, even in the board meeting, and nobody needs to know you're playing with yourself.
So that gives you free permission to just go ahead and do it. Lynda said.
Well, that sounds like a good idea, and I thank you for those suggestions. I want to move on and talk a little bit about this new book that Maria is bringing out. Now, how do you say Ah-kine?
Ah-kine.
Ah-kine.
It means actualized ones, and that's what we were taught, that the ancient ones before our ancestors called those beings that came down from the star nations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most Native American tribes that I know of, and the other indigenous people that I've worked with throughout the years, have this sense that we are not totally from this planet. They talk about bird tribes. I mean, the Cherokee, all their clans are after the 7 sisters. So, you know, there is this in the mystical religions of Earth. And Grandpa used to chuckle and he'd say, all those scientists are looking the wrong way when they're looking for the missing link. That they need to be looking up, not down. And so, you know, even with everything they've discovered, we still have this big gap in how did we get from caveman to the type of human being we are now. So, as you're growing up in Diyan, which is the snake clan, you hear stories. They started off when we were kids. We'd go to the campfires, and all the elders would be telling stories all winter long. And November usually starts the winter stories. And one of the first ones they like to tell is how Creator gave Beetle a basket of crystals and he went out and threw them in the sky. And the next thing we knew, we had stars to light our way. The next one they told was about how Coyote fell in love with this star, and she fell in love with him, and she actually fell out of orbit, and bam, now we've got Earth. So, you know, there's all these things, and, you know, that's kind of my own little unique telling short style there.
Yeah, we understand. Yeah, we understand. You just compressed 5.5 days into 5 minutes.
Into like 2 minutes. So, as long as the point gets across, I guess that's it. So, anyway, it's through the storytelling that we learned what rituals to do during what seasons, and there are initiations that we have in life. Well, we were taught that these initiations were the initiations that the star beings gave us to also progress our spiritual maturation. And so there are variations on whether you're doing a blessing and naming for a baby being born, or you're doing the birthing of love and you're accepting these concepts into your heart so that you can go boom, you know. One of the things they had me do when I was a kid to help with that boom part was they had me go out and stare at the moon on full moon nights. And they'd have me like look into a body of water to stare at her too. And they'd say, okay, now we want you to see the pulsing of that moon. So I'd watch them pulsing, and then they'd go, now check your heart, is it pulsing at the same rate? And then they'd have you check your breathing, and they'd say, so is the moon breathing you, or are you breathing the moon? And these are the kind of little games they had us playing as kids, but it would open us up to have this communication, this interconnection to all things, the star nations, the earth, the animals. It was a way that we learned to be part of, and that they were part of us. So the book, what the book does is it shares some stories. It talks about some special crystals that I use that help connect us. Like the Hawaiians and the Cherokee, the Pleiades are it for the Apache. We see that star constellation as our source of origin. And so it's got some things about crystal gridding. It talks about the atmospheric bodies, you know. Etheric bodies is what I've heard them called in other traditions, but we consider the etheric body just one of those 7 bodies in our system. So it talks a little bit about that. But the big deal to me is that it gives these rituals in a simplistic format so people can go out there and start opening themselves to the possibility of the impossible. And that's my goal with the book, that it touches people's hearts so that they stop conceptualizing everything in a box.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we all talk about working outside the box. Well, to do that, we have to allow for all possibility. And this, I think, works people towards that.
You know, Raven and I both are, you know, part of the Egyptian tradition as part of our mystery school.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, there we come from Orion, from Sirius. And the entire plateau of Giza is cast in the mold of Orion, and is pretty well accepted at this point.
Yeah.
You know, it's been identified. But what it says, and what it says to me, is that the relationship to the stars was so strong when there were no lights, that whether or not we came from the stars or not, we identified with the stars. And we identified with them in a way that they illuminated our lives. They were the goalpost of the night. I mean, during the day you had the sun, it went east to west, and that was about it. But at night you could tell exactly where you were going. We were going sailing, I learned a little bit of star navigation.
Yeah.
I didn't learn a lot because we had a GPS and it was easier, but If it's got a computer, I love it. But I did learn some of it, and it's truly remarkable. And whenever you start seeing, the star maps going back hundreds and thousands of years that they use. I mean, talking about the Magyar Ram, they follow the stars. They followed the stars for at least 3,000 years and possibly longer. We don't know how long they've followed it as a tradition of travel. And it's when the star does, when it moves to here, we have to be here. This is where we belong. So the embodiment of stars, and one of the things I was hearing Mikio Kachu, I can't say his name right, Japanese gentleman, on the morning news, and he was talking about it, and he says, well, we don't have to look for aliens. We're already here.
Yes.
And he says, we came from the stars. Without the stars, we would not be here.
Right.
And, kind of, everybody's going like, well, what do you mean aliens? Well, we are seeded from the stars. They're the life form that created us. And whether it was Isis and Osiris who came down in a ship and did some, what do you want to call it? Raven, help me here.
What? You're doing fine. You just plow through it. So
modification in order to create modern man, or whether it was the star beings who came down to the Hopi. I mean, I have on my wall in my bedroom, the first thing I see every morning, the last thing I see every night is Crow Mother. I have this beautiful painting of Crow Mother and Mother of the Kachinas. And every morning I greet her, and every evening I say goodnight to her. But that she brought, in some way, she brought that star being, that star resonance into our being. And whether that happened or, what it was that happened, all we know is that if we go back 10,000 years, there's a lot of things we can't explain.
Yep.
I used to refer to it as alternative history. I don't know whether I refer to it as that anymore, but I love those alternatives and the traditions of the Mayans, the Apache, the Navajo, the Hopi, even the traditions of the northern tribes who were very latecomers to this country. That's why they got stuck in Canada. All the good land was gone. But we have this opportunity to look at where we are and where we've come from, because it is what informs where we are going to go. And that's what I see in your book, is the opportunity for us to look at where we've come from, and this is where I can go with it. That I can make my life different as I go forward. And am I reading it right, or?
Yes, you are.
That's how I
Thank
read
you.
it. Yeah, that's amazing.
And also, I know you've heard this over and over, but how many people say, I just want to go home?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And I don't know where home is.
Yeah.
And people say, you mean you want to die? No, I just want to go home. Well, you want to go back to where you grew up? No, I want to go home. And sometimes it's such a profound aching and sorrow to not be there.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I'm like that, I go out and stare at the moon, and I'm just like, can I go home now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of our legends say that, when Coyote met this star and she fell out of the Pleiades to become Earth, was that in this fifth world time, what is occurring is there's supposed to be a total of 7 worlds that have different reality consciousness. Mm-hmm. And so what's supposed to be happening in the fifth world is that Mama said, okay, enough time with my husband's family. It's time to take the kids home to my family. And that's what's happening, that we're headed back through that photon belt. And so the aching, if you will, some of us call it calling, some of us call it aching, that need to return to something else, that this is part of what is creating the scenario, the energy that's attracting the energy that's pulling us in that direction. It's because we're all feeling it, and the more that we feel it, the more it's happening. According to the Hopi elders that I've worked with, and to some of the others, and my own grandpa, it's like they thoroughly expect science to wake up one morning, look out that telescope, and see a completely different starscape.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've heard in the last couple of years. I follow that. Oh yeah, it went right out of my brain. The Watchers. Okay, it's an internet service that you can subscribe to, like any newspaper, and they put up the storms and the earthquakes, but they also put the intergalactic stuff up. And just 3-4 times this last year, science has been stumped because it didn't turn out the way they told us it was. And it's like, this is happening. They are waking up. They are seeing different things that are making them reevaluate what they believe. And I did I did a religious studies thing back in college where I compared all the world religions, and in my thesis I took them back to before Christianity, before they became, Muhammad, whatever, and they all came from earth religions that believed the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So in the spirituality of earth, in the premise of what is believed as far as the star nations, I think what they all have in common, that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
The rest we have developed depending on the continents we grew up on, the cultures, and how much control humanity wanted to put on each other. And that's what religion has boiled down to. And it's only what they all still have in common and what they originated in that is the truth of Earth and what is taking us there.
So when will your new book be out?
You can get it in its current form right now at our webpage, yraceburu.org. It's Yraceburu. It is being re-edited to be released by a publisher. The current form is self-published, but we're going to a publishing firm, and it will actually be out, we think, March or April is when they're going to be done with it. But it will not look the same, I promise you that.
In fact, you might want to buy the self-published book and then buy the other book, because
hey, what the good news is, the ones that sell now, eventually, 10, 15 years from now, will be collector's items. So there you have it.
So hold it up again so we can see it.
All right.
There you go. So anyway, we thank you so much for being on tonight, and we've really enjoyed talking with you, and we really would enjoy talking, for another several hours, but it is getting on towards evening, and I do want to thank you for being here. I want to invite everybody to come back next week whenever Diana Price will be on. Diana is a beautiful woman who does, she's actually a Christian priestess, our first. So she sings in the church, and she has a radio show which I was on back in October. Lovely lady that, her system of belief is a little different, but in many ways it's still the same.
Yeah,
she comes from a very strong matrilineal tradition, and I look forward to hearing what she has to say. We also have Nikki Faldamayo, who's going to be here the week after. And Nikki is a tantric priestess, and she's lives here in San Diego, but has traveled the world, and we'll see what she has to say. And then Kala Ambrose will be here the first week in December. Kala has a very successful online radio TV show. I just finalized with Ava Parks today. She'll be on with us for Bridget's Day in February. So we're looking forward to a number of interesting people. I also want to bring you up to date. My magazine has now passed the first hurdle of submission at the Apple magazine, and will hopefully within a week be available on the newsstand, which means I will be going forward with the next issue during this time to get it up there as soon as possible. But I want to thank all of you who've sent in articles and pictures and information, because it's all going in there. Don't worry, it's still going to be there. You know, I never promised you. One of the things I've tried to avoid is promise dates, because I can't control. You know, it's like I'm dealing with Apple, I'm dealing with software, I'm dealing with Amazon, and you know, I can't control when they're going to allow me to have this out there. So it is available on the Gathering of Priestesses membership website. It's also available on the Gathering of Priestesses a page or group in Facebook. So if you're interested, take a look. And if you would like to have an article in there, I'm still looking for articles, and I'm always going to be looking for articles. And this is not a goddess magazine. This is not. It is a magazine for women who serve the divine. So anything about being a priestess in any form, whether it's your story or the story of your mother, or a ritual, information about altars, whatever you believe goes into being a priestess, let's support them in that, because I think that we're coming into the age of the priestess. It's no longer the age of the priest.
Right. Nope.
And so Maria and Lynda, I would like to give you a final word here. And if you'd like to invite people to come out to events, you've got some coming up, I believe, in the spring.
In February, we've got our first iskiñhi gathering, actually in Hawaii. So I hope some of you will make it out for that. We have 2 Hawaiian kahuna that will be teaching and sharing information from that background. I'll be there leading the birthing rituals, and it's on my aunt's heiau, and you can't get any better than Ohana treating you. So come on out and be family, and anytime, come on out to New Mexico and visit us. It's a great place.
And both of you are available for private practice, is that correct?
Yes, we do getaways for women, and then we're available for sessions with men or women. We're not restricted.
Right. Okay, well, that's great. And again, we thank you for being here. Raven, I want to thank you for being present and for being my co-host and my support. I can't do it without you, love.
You better not.
So I'd like to say good night to all of those that are listening to us, and thank you, and good night, and we'll see you next week.